but look, bring it forward to Lewis signing for them.
Yeah,
that
my
photo
God.
of him at Maranello is
Iconic.
I mean, it's like a moment in history, isn't it?
Yeah. Can Lewis win his 8th championship title this campaign, you think?
Yeah, why not?
I knew this would be a bad idea. Like us doing this podcast together in person.
I know.
Because we have always had this innate ability to find, this common ground of laughter. And that means that people don't necessarily think we take things really seriously. We do take things really seriously, don't we? But the problem is
not everything.
We have a connection which we understand between each other, which means that we can occasionally just inappropriately burst into giggles. And so let's see how the next hour goes.
I mean, because at least the last one we did was virtual.
Yeah.
And so
we had some distance.
I could look away or up or disconnect, but you're right here.
I know.
Now.
I'm too close.
I know.
It's like being back at school.
Yeah.
It's like being back in Monsieur Barthélemy's French class, where we were repeatedly told how badly behaved we were and, sent to detention.
Tout est bien qui finit bien.
I don't think we finished anything in that particular class.
So all's well that ends well for anyone that needs a little French lesson there. We had an agreement that we would just put that at the end of every document in all our exams as a sort of sign off.
Actually, we did all right at French. It was I don't remember anything of it past the exam stage, but there we go. Okay, so kicking things off then.
Yes.
I want to talk about defining moments in your world, because right now you're at the height of your heights in Formula One and broadcasting from the paddock and doing what you do. And you're looking at me with a really strange look on your face. But I suppose that feels weird coming from a friend to sort of talk like that. But it's true. That is what you're doing.
Really nice.
And so you're at the peak of your powers within Formula One. It wasn't always like that. But tracking back to kind of the early days and actually what's got you here, what you've learned from being in and around that world, in and around, really seriously high performers, high achievers, and what you've sort of taken from that and what you want to sort of just park to the side because some of it is quite full on, and other bits that you've actually sort of been able to apply to your kind of everyday life when you come back home. And I know coming back from a Formula One event is a weird experience. I've done that too. And it's strange, isn't it? You almost have to go into some sort of decompression phase before you come back into normal life because you've been living in such a sort of bubble. So defining moments, tracking back, was there one? Has there been one that you can sort of pinpoint and go, that has been the making of me?
I think for anyone and everyone, there's a whole series of defining moments, aren't there? Lots of mini ones that probably just shift you one way or the other. And then clearly bigger ones that feel like a moment in time. Throwing my mind back to my first ever race was quite significant because some listeners may already know this, but I work with Hope and Homes for Children. This is a charity looking to close orphanages and bring children back to families. But the significance of that was that I had just been over in Romania looking for one particular girl. And the idea was that I was going to tell the story of a lost generation of children through one girl's eyes.
So how did that come about? Just track back, how that even happened.
So
and why it was this one girl.
Well, I worked in an orphanage, sort of as a very naive student, thinking I was going to make a difference.
Yeah.
Remember me at Queensford, always wanting to save the world, and one step at a time, whatever. But it was misled. I was misinformed because I went and worked in an orphanage, and actually, what I was doing was I was compounding the problem. I was going in, trying to help these children, satisfy my curiosity about the lives they were living, and then leaving again. So effectively abandoning them all over again. So it was really, I look back on it with a sense of shame. I wanted to do good, but actually I probably made the situation worse, particularly for this one little girl who I connected with called Morella. And then she always played on my mind for years and years and years. And 10 years later, I remember a lovely guy called Eric Bailey, who was the editor of the Mail on Sunday at the time, saying, look, I know that you've got this passion to try and find this one girl and almost treat her story as a microcosm of a much, much bigger
picture.
Yeah, darker picture, quite a sinister situation. And he said, I just want to send you on your way and help you find her because I think that you will find her. He was basically saying, look, I know she's still alive, so it will be worth your while looking. Anyway, I mean, I'm condensing years into minutes here, but I went to Romania and I found myself looking in the sewers under Bucharest for this little girl.
But what did that feel like? Like taking yourself back there and putting yourself back again in that situation. I mean, what were the sort of emotions whirling around inside you during that time?
I mean, I was scared, if I'm completely honest. It was just me and a guy who was like producer, director, cameraman, sound guy, all rolled into one.
Yeah.
Plus security guard. He was a big guy and he was great, actually. He said, look, there's various things that could have happened to this girl. She could have been adopted, unlikely, but possible. You know, that was the best scenario.
Yeah.
She could have been trafficked. That was very likely that she'd been taken into the sex trade. She could have gone under the city because there's a whole city of children underneath Bucharest, which I just could not believe. Or she could still be in an institution. So we were sort of like exhausting our options.
Did you think you'd find her alive like 10 years later?
That was the only thing I'd had from Eric Bailey, was that actually we think she was alive. They believe she was alive. How they knew that, I didn't know. But I had to go on that journey.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I climbed down this 20-foot ladder into this sewer. And I went, what are we doing? I mean, I was petrified.
I mean, you're a bit claustrophobic, aren't you?
No, I'm all right with that, but my heart was racing.
Yeah.
My heart was really racing. And I shone a torch and all these little eyes looked back at me.
That's horrendous.
I couldn't believe it. And then I started talking to these kids and they all started to explain to me that this was a better option for them than an institution. How bad are the institutions that was better? So they had created a semblance of a family of their own. And family comes in all shapes and sizes, right? So, you know, they felt that was better than anything that they could have above ground, you know, where they were more exposed to abuse, more vulnerable to trafficking, that they were actually kind of looking after each other and they created their own safety.
And however bad in your head you think it might look like, or you think it might be, the last thing in a million years is that you're going to be confronted with that sight, right?
Yeah, I mean, there were needles on the floor, there were rats running around, it stank, it was disgusting, but it was warm because they were in safe. The sewers because it was warm, and for at least in their minds they were safe. So anyway, I didn't find her down there. They you know, nobody knew her down there, and I spoke to various child prostitutes, you know, and it was just like such a horrific kind of learning curve, very steep learning curve, education for me. Again, very naive, and you know, come from a very privileged background, and I felt out of my depth.
Yeah.
Anyway, I did eventually find her, and she was tied to a radiator. She was still in the institution, but she'd been moved to another institution. So she wasn't in the one that I had worked in. And she was just stripped of all of her life skills. So she couldn't walk, she couldn't talk. Her hands were clawed. She was punching herself repeatedly in the chest.
And how much worse was she than when you'd left her that 10 years prior?
She was a different child. I could recognise her with her face.
Yeah.
And I was shown documentation to say it was her. We didn't have a birth certificate for her because she was abandoned at birth. But you know, it was her. It was her. And I mean, this might be a romantic notion in my mind, but I believed she recognised me as well. Like we had a moment, and yeah, there was a connection there. But she was a different child in terms of her life skills. Yeah, it was brutal. She'd been stripped of it all. Anyway, this is obviously fairly depressing. But what then happened was I fast forward a week, and I found myself in Australia in the Paddock for my first ever Grand Prix.
You can't get a more distinct comparison or contrast rather than those two worlds, can you?
It was crazy.
That's
to me.
Really
it felt
surreal.
like a surreal dream, exactly. And it was my first race for BBC 5 Live. I really felt like overawed by the situation. It was like an assault on the senses. It was like, oh my God, all these people. And I've always loved Formula One, and I've always been a fan of the sport and felt like I knew a lot about it, but this was intense. Yeah. And I was wandering around like a bit of a lost soul, and I was like, I really don't know what to do here. And I remember ringing my mum saying, Mum, I've just come from abject poverty and trauma and, you know, child abuse to suddenly this sort of egregious wealth and billionaires at every turn and spending an exorbitant amount of money on cars going around.
So how do you reconcile that?
But that's what I couldn't do, and that's what was stressing me out. And I didn't understand what I was supposed to do with my life, because Mirella and her story mattered to me, and I felt a sense of responsibility and duty and care and shame. I felt like I had to do something, but equally, this was a job that I thought I would love.
When you left the second time, how did you feel leaving the second time?
After I'd found her.
After you'd found her.
Yeah, different, but very motivated to this.
Go and do something about it for other kids.
Yeah. That. So I remember ringing my mum and going, "Oh my God, Mum, this is driving me crazy." And she said, "Well, look, can I just tell you one thing? You're not going to quit your job for 5 Live. And the reason you're not going to quit your job, because, well, first of all, she knew that I would love it ultimately. But she said, you'll find in life that the two can complement each other. These two parts of your life can. And in fact, you could leverage your position in one to benefit the other."
Yeah.
So there are loads of very well-meaning people out there in the world, but they don't necessarily know where their money can be best spent. And actually, I don't want to sound like, it's not so grand as to say it was a Robin Hood, but you could absolutely not steal from the rich, but
no, you
relieve
can
them of some money.
Yeah, well, you can definitely,
exactly.
You can paint a picture which they may be willing to support because you're shining a light on it.
Yeah.
And then as a result of that, both worlds, achieve something out of it.
Yeah, exactly. Mutually beneficial.
Yeah.
And so I went to bed that night and in Australia, and I remember thinking,
it's still hard though.
Yeah.
It's still a hard thing to get your head around.
Yeah. And I was like, Mum's normally right.
Yeah, always.
That's what I tell my kids now anyway. The next day, I kid you not, the next day, I'm in the paddock again, a bit like, what am I doing here? And this guy comes over to me and he said, "Oh, who are you? It's your first day?" And I was like, "Yeah," because it's my first day too. And I was like, "You're kidding." And he, my first race weekend. And he was like, "What did you do over the winter?" And I went, "That's just a bit random." But I told him, gave him a little snapshot of it. And he went a bit. He said, "My name's Paul Hembry. I'm head of motorsport for Pirelli. And I am building a factory for Pirelli in Slatina, where you found Mirella.
Wow.
And I need you to know that I didn't have the most straightforward of childhoods, and what you've done and doing has really resonated with me. I'd like to give you your first check." I mean, it was as serendipitous and straightforward and simple as that. And he gave me 25 grand. I burst into tears. I mean, it sounds a ridiculous story, but it happened.
It's amazing, isn't it?
So, Joy Pinkham.
Yeah, well done, Joy.
Good on you, girl.
Yeah.
Good on you, Granny
Pinks. I suppose that is, us now as mums and whatever, telling our children, it is a matter of perspective. I think that is what mums have, don't they? Over time, they've seen it all. They've seen it all unfold. And actually, she could work out and, articulate it to you that go down the path that you've chosen, but just always keep this in your head.
Yeah.
And make sure you make the most of those opportunities as and when they come.
100%. And genuinely, I feel that so passionately about Formula One, is that I've met some amazing people in the last, and this is my 15th season.
Yeah, I can't believe that. You are still only 25. It's amazing.
Edit Wikipedia. Beep, beep, beep. But
do we dare tell everyone that you've been lying about your age forever?
No, because you bloody tell everyone your real age, and everyone knows we went to school together, so I'm screwed. Thanks, G. But actually, Formula One, I have met some incredible people, and they really are at the forefront of innovation and technology and development, but also some really, really good people. And all the way through to now, where we are putting on Flackstock, the mental health festival in memory of our friend Caroline Flack. And so many people up and down the paddock have supported me in that process, because they recognise the importance of mental health. They want to do something. They're not quite sure what, but this gives them an authentic vehicle to show that their staff, that they're serious about mental health. So they send loads of the engineers and the families and, mechanics and aerodynamicists. I walk around the field, Flackstock, and I see all my mates from Formula One who've been sent by the teams. So that's amazing, because it's benefiting the teams and their people. And it's benefiting us because we get sponsorship and we get ticket sales that then goes straight back into Mind, Choose Love, Samaritans, Charlie Roller.
Which is amazing.
Which are all the mental health courses that
and
we
it
support.
comes back to that thing that your mum was trying to encourage you to do right at the very beginning.
Yeah.
And so having been in this world of sort of Formula One, which is a crazy existence for the best part of 15 and a half years or so, like there are so many takeaways of that. I mean, one of my big takeaways from being in and around Ben's world, which is not a million miles away in terms of...
You've worked in Formula One, so
and
you
I've
know
worked
it
in
as
Formula
well.
One, but is this elite sport thinking thing?
Yeah.
This is what we always refer to when we're talking about the brand. We're always talking about elite sport thinking and having that knowledge in your camp. Is that also something that, you know, you can't take that for granted being in and around the Formula One paddock, but everywhere you look in that paddock, there are elite sport thinkers, whether it's the driver, whether it's the mechanics, the engineers, you know, the pit guys, like whatever it is, everybody is thinking at this level. I mean, how do they do that? How do they sort of create a structure which supports the finest thinkers at the highest level in sport, would you say?
I'm not sure about that, but I do know that there is a definite mindset shift when you join Formula One. Yeah. And certain things just become common practice. And so you don't necessarily even know you're doing it. Yeah. But
it's what's expected.
It's what's expected. And then you expect it of yourself. So timekeeping. Yeah. It sounds a simple one. Yeah. But actually, I get incredibly irritated by when people are late. We're a bit late.
We
today,
were both late for this podcast.
Well, only because we really wanted a cup of tea.
Exactly.
So we were in the
building.
building.
And a bacon sandwich. Yeah. Well, you didn't have that because you're a vegetarian. Yeah. But poached eggs.
But you know that we needed to be elite mindset for the podcast. We had to eat first.
Yes, quite right.
So no, but it is interesting because I remember on the same first race weekend. No, actually it was with Sky, so it would have been a year later. So 2012, Australia. Yeah. I remember...
We did that together.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
And I remember the sound guy sort of stumbled in a bit late to, not naming any names, but a little bit late to a Michael Schumacher interview. And then he didn't do the interview. And we were like, what do you mean you're not doing it? Well, he was late. So he just stopped and turned and walked off. And then from then on, it was like we were early and we're always early. There's no exceptions. And I think that's just a good discipline.
That's also, I think, live television. It's like your deadlines are your deadlines. You go on air when you go on air. If you don't turn up, you're not ready. That's a real problem. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So it is ingrained in you that you've got to maintain that.
But I always say this to my kids as well. It's like discipline from sport is so applicable in life. It sets you up with a really healthy mindset to deal with anything, school, homework, you know, just to have structure and discipline, which you definitely learn from Formula One. And I'm sure Ben's world and, you know, pretty much football, rugby, whatever, you work as a team, you're in unison, there's a synergy, there's a positive dynamic there. And it's very handy for life.
One of the things that really struck me working in Formula One and working with those guys is the attention to detail piece. It's like, I just don't think there's anything like it in terms of absolutely to the nth degree, squeezing every little bit of performance that you possibly can out of the human and also out of the machine. And it is extraordinary, isn't it? Their attention to detail. I mean, you remember watching those pit practices where where we were watching those pit stops, and it went from, I think when we were doing it was like 4 seconds, and it shrunk down to sort of 2 seconds. I don't even know what it is now. At one point, it's insane.
I mean, it is crazy, isn't it? But if you think about it, it's the sport of marginal gains, and we're talking thousandths of a second. I mean, actually going into this season, the grid is probably going to be closer than it's ever been.
Is it?
There's probably 4 teams genuinely in it with opportunities to win, not just races, but championships. You know, we get, listen, I'm bigging it up for a good reason, but I do think that there's been this convergence over 24, that coming into 25, before this big reg change in 26, that we're going to see a very, very competitive grid. So every little counts. Everything matters. And you're right, therefore attention to detail is a must. But again, you can take that away whether you're a broadcaster or a mechanic, or, you know, even if you work behind the scenes in catering or PR, those same principles and disciplines apply. And I think that is really useful for everything in life, isn't it? Because you have to work hard. And actually, I've always said this about F1. If you work hard and you're passionate, you'll succeed. It is a meritocracy. You will flourish. You've got the opportunity to flourish in Formula One.
But you absolutely have to do the graft, which is true. And those weekends are completely relentless.
Yeah.
I mean, also just from a physical perspective, like getting from A to B when you've got a calendar that's got 24 races globally over the course of a season. I mean, you do not sleep well. How do you overcome that on a regular basis without feeling like you've aged like 10 years every year?
Well, I have aged 10 years every year.
Bloody now about 120.
But going back, so gym in Mexico, being an idiot, show off. And then I was like, oh, God, I think I've done something here. Then I go for a massage because I was like, amazing. You can get really good massages in Mexico. So I go for that. And then I go straight to the track. And then I do full day. And then another full day. And it is, it's fast paced. You have to be reactive.
You're clock watching the whole time.
Yep. And you have to be on your toes and able to respond to any situation because lots of things were happening. And I had a bit of a moment on air where I got a bit confused. Well, I got a bit confused about Perez coming out of his box at the start. And then I sort of said to Martin, well, why couldn't he just sort of reverse it back into the box? And he was like, you can't do that, Pinkers. And by the way, you're live on air. You've just like blown your cover. But in my defense, Bernie Collins then disputed that in the office and said, there isn't actually a hard and fast rule about reversing into the box. Croft was like, yes, you cannot reverse into the box. She said, well, the fact that there is a dispute within our office and indeed on the pit wall
says it's not clear.
Says it's not clear for the fans. Yeah. So well done to me for looking like a twat, but asking the question.
And did you end up getting a load of hot grief for that?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
That's what happens.
I got stick on social media, but actually loads of people are like, yeah, but what is the answer? Because none of us know. So anyway, my point is it was a hot, relentless weekend. Then I fly home another 11 hours and went... I know I did have a couple of days holiday, so actually I feel quite bad now. No, but I relaxed a little bit with the kids, but then flew them back and then woke up one morning, couldn't move. I literally couldn't move. Now you're going to do your inappropriate laughter.
No, I'm not, because I share your pain, because you have got the same thing. We've got the same thing going on.
So,
and weirdly, Gabby Logan's got tennis elbow at the minute as well. And mine started with tennis elbow.
Do you think we're all just getting a bit old?
Well, it might be that, but it literally genuinely started with tennis. So you carry on with yours and then you tell me about yours and I'll tell you about mine.
Yeah, it's like therapy, isn't it? Anyway, I went for an MRI and there's significant damage in my neck. Playing too much sport growing up, wear and tear, did the marathon, whatever it was, 9 months ago. And that definitely took its toll. And then what I was doing was just going race to race to race to race, jumping off flights, weight sessions, running to the track, bish, bash, bosh, not sleeping well, crucially, not hydrating or sleeping well enough. And then bang, disc in my neck slipped, trapped all the nerve down here. And it was 10 weeks, of agony. You know how painful it is. Yeah. It was like childbirth, continuous childbirth for 10 weeks. I was a zombie. I couldn't sit down. I couldn't lie down. So the only comfortable position was standing up. That's when the nerves sort of freed slightly. And so the only way I was out to sleep.
Awful tingling sensation that you just can't shake and you feel like there's something
got that now.
Fundamentally going wrong.
Got my Mr. Burns hand.
Yeah.
I can't sort of grip.
And can you put your hand
I try and scare the children with it.
Can you put your hand on my hand and tighten it?
I can do. Yeah,
so you're really struggling. You're struggling to do it.
This hand,
it's amazing.
It is weird, but anyway, really, the only way I could sleep was ice packs on the floor, fall asleep on the ice pack, wake up Thursday to change the ice packs. So I did that for 10 weeks, and this isn't like a kind of violin thing, but this is a real wake up call for me that actually you have to put
yourself.
You
first.
have to, and well, not I wasn't going to say that. You have to preempt problems.
Yes, be proactive about it.
Be proactive. Yeah. So don't just think, oh, I'll be fine. I'll relax at the end of the season. I missed Abu Dhabi. I missed the season closer. I missed the showdown for the constructors.
Because you weren't
I was
properly
gutted.
Functioning.
I couldn't move. There was no way I could get in an Uber, let alone on a flight. And then I eventually had these 2 big CT-guided injections in my neck to take down the inflammation, which over a period of like 2 or 3 weeks did
that
work.
Takes a while.
But it feels a bit like I'm papering over the cracks here.
Yeah.
That was enough for me to be able to get on a plane with my husband and kids to go to Kenya, because I thought otherwise I'm going to have to cancel the whole trip for everyone. It's like 20 of us going, right? But this is quite funny. I haven't admitted this to anyone yet. So I was getting really stressed about this flight to Kenya.
We had lunch like the day before that, something like that. And you were in a sling.
Yeah.
And we all said to you, what are you doing?
Yeah,
you can't go on a safari in this state. You can't even move. You couldn't move your hand. You couldn't do anything. So then what happened? Because Wiggy was like, you are going on this holiday. You're getting on the plane.
He said, do you know what I would do? And I said, feeling you're going to tell me. I'd just get on with it. I went, oh, that is wonderful.
Very helpful.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Wigs. But Thanks, Wigs. But you did.
Well,
and then what happened?
Well, I did. Oh. But what I did was I quite cleverly waited until Brentford were 4-2 up in the football at the weekend. And I knew you'd had a couple of pints of Guinness. I didn't obviously go to the football because I couldn't sit for long enough. So I just messaged him and I say, do you mind if I upgrade myself on this flight? And of course, he didn't really read it. Went, of course, baby, like this. So then I just upgraded myself and didn't talk about it, right? And so my kids get on the plane and they turn right, good, important lesson. Kids aren't going to fly business, not a chance. And I go, okay, see you then, guys. And they went, what? I said, I'm in 2A. And they were like, what do you mean you're in 2A? I said, check your phone, Wiggy. And he was like, I don't remember agreeing to this. I said, too late. And I did actually feel quite bad.
But did you not spend the entire flight feeling awful?
No, because what I did was, obviously I was in the sling and I had like a neck brace and so I got loads of sympathy.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, everyone around me was like, please let me carry that. I was like, please let me make your bed. And then I just washed a couple of Sopoclones and some ainslie night powder and slept like a baby.
Oh my goodness gracious. It's amazing though.
I did feel like a bit of a bad mum though.
But this injury that we've both got, mine started with tennis elbow. And I think it was because I was out of condition, because I was working so solidly and hadn't given myself, again, that proactive thing about your own health, which is what I bang on about the whole time with the powders. I wasn't actually doing that for myself a couple of years back.
You're very naughty.
I know. And so I gave myself this tennis elbow and had a great deal of treatment on it with one of those Theragun things.
Oh, yeah.
But it did dissipate it, but it didn't solve it. Yeah. And then I went for a CT scan and an MRI, just like you two been talking about, trapped nerve, slip disc, herniated disc. Oh. And they're like, well, surgery is the only option. I was like, oh, can I get around it? Can I get around surgery? Yeah. So I did the same as you. I had an injection in my neck to just calm the inflammation.
Yeah. But do you know what the really interesting thing was that the guy that gave me the injection in my neck went, do you know what? Obviously, I can never tell you names, but you wouldn't believe the amount of people I see in Formula One. Really? And I went, really? And he said, and there is such a pressure.
The travel and the pressure and everything.
Said, you get dehydrated on planes. You're in a fixed position, even if you fly business, which, obviously 80% of us don't. But you're in a fixed position and then you're getting off the plane and going straight to the track.
Yeah.
Your body clock's completely confused. You're not hydrated enough. You're not sleeping properly. And then it's just this relentless, must keep going, can't be a failure. We have to keep winning. We have to. And so we do need to be kinder on ourselves, which actually brings me back to Flaxstock, which is all about, looking after yourself and the mental health support, because the last thing we want in F1 is a brain drain. Bernie Collins said to me, I could not have stayed as a strategist because I couldn't go to 24 races in a season. It's just not possible. And actually it's not right or fair. It doesn't give relationships the chance to flourish, but also yourself. You have to look after yourself. And I
think that's so true. It's so easy to, I suppose, with a sport like that's at the absolute, top of its powers, peak of its powers, actually stepping back and saying, what are we doing for everyone to make sure that they're as well looked after as they can be? Because this is what we're asking them to do, is quite crazy.
And then what is it? You crash and burn and then you've gone all together. So really, honestly, I'm coming in this 2025. I'm absolutely stepping back. I've been chatting to this amazing guy called Matt Lovell, who gives me a bespoke approach to nutrition, what works for me, what doesn't. I was smashing loads of, the greens every day.
Yeah.
And he said, actually, your body isn't absorbing what it needs to at the moment. We need to go back a step.
Yeah.
And tailor it.
So what does he tell you to do for all this traveling that you're doing?
Well, inflammation's a big issue for me. So I need to be really cutting out sugar. I mean, alcohol is like the devil.
Yeah.
It tastes so good.
And sometimes. But you're right. But if you look at when we do our data sleep metrics on our sleep trackers and you look at the difference it makes to your deep sleep and your HRV and everything that people value in sleep, like actually alcohol is like the single most nightmarish component.
There's nothing
of that.
good about it.
No, I mean, if you could just let that go, everything does naturally get better.
So I'd love to talk to a scientist about this because maybe you can enlighten me. Does the release of serotonin when you have a glass of wine with your best mate counter the damage that drinking that glass of alcohol?
Surely not. Surely not, because it's momentary.
Really nice.
I know, but it's momentary and it's temporary.
And the trouble is we convince ourselves that the only way to decompress with your mate is to have a glass of wine. Actually, why can't we just do this without booze and just have a nice mint tea?
And a bacon sandwich. Ish, so this is what we did. So with this guy, so you've got that advice coming in. And do you think that, you know, you get on top of your nutrition, you get on top of your sleep, which is something, I mean, let's just talk about your sleep, because your sleep, the day I can remember, and we've known each other since we were 11, which was about 10 years ago. Your sleep is disastrous, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But I also wonder whether that's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy that I say it's disastrous and therefore it is. I almost think like,
what have you done? What have you done up until this point to try and counteract that? Would first of all, let's explain how bad it has been.
Yes.
And then let's talk about what you've done to try and get on top of it.
Okay. Well, my biggest problem is actually night terrors. And
still,
and sleepwalking. So I definitely have a huge amount of anxiety in the dark at nighttime, and I think that's partly because I genuinely don't feel fazed about anything during the day. Obviously, I worry about the safety of my loved ones. Like any mother, I worry about my kids, but beyond that, nothing really fazes me. And I think possibly what I do is I push it all into the nighttime where I can't control it. And then at nighttime, it's almost like I regress back to being a little kid.
But you're not like a control freak of a person. That's not in your mindset. So it's not that you sort of feel that you can control the day, but you can't control the night.
No, definitely not. And I genuinely feel really grateful. Like that gratitude is a massive. Like I feel grateful every time I wake up in the morning with my husband and kids. I mean, not always with my husband, but definitely my kids. And for my friendships and for my family, I feel very lucky. Love my job, love the creativity that Flaxstock offers us and the fact we're able to help so many people. Like it's amazing. Like it's it's a very happy life.
So what are you worried about?
And then something happens at nighttime. But I think that's partly because I always do sleepwalk and talk and have night terrors, that I then fear going to bed because I think, shit, what am I going to do tonight? That genuinely is a thing for me. So even the other night, look, Wiggy has taken to sleeping in the spare room.
Yeah.
Because because his problem is falling asleep. And he can't fall asleep. I fall asleep like pretty quickly. I can't stay asleep. So we're completely at odds with each other. And then what happens? He eventually falls asleep, and then I go Rah! And scream, scare the living daylights out of him, and then his heart is racing because it's like I respond as if there's someone's broken in, and we live in Brentford. It's a bit edgy, so he's thinking, has someone actually broken in? And no, they haven't. I then fall back to sleep quite quickly. He can't go back to sleep, so then his night's ruined.
Yeah,
and then I'll do it again, and it's not great. So we have a little cuddle and then I pack him off to the spare room.
That's just,
but then I did read somewhere couples that don't sleep together stay together. Or is it the other way around? Can't remember.
We'll soon find out.
I'll let you know.
Your answers on a postcard. Yeah. But so that's the situation. So it's obviously horrible, like that you don't want to carry on like that, but you've been carrying on like that for a really, really long time. So what have you tried to mitigate it with?
So what I need to do with your help is I genuinely need to
you're like a one-person sleep study.
Yeah. In all seriousness, I am, because the other thing is I definitely wake up and get a busy mind at around 4. So like a dream might wake me up, but then I'm awake and I get intrusive thoughts and I start like worrying about work. Am I doing a good enough job? Am I a good enough mum? Am I present enough for my kids and like helping them with what they need? And so all these things start whirring through my head, and then it will become back to really menial things. So I'll start thinking, I haven't ordered cat litter, you know. And
so okay, so you've tried everything. Have you tried supplementation?
Yeah,
So
I'm using this off season, really, really so I've cut right back on booze, you know, apart from at the weekend, it was Frank's birthday, it was good fun, but really cut back on booze. I haven't actually been enjoying it that much anyway, because you definitely sleep worse. And the sugar stresses me out. And then doing the night powders. And then occasionally I will take some melatonin if I feel like I've woken up. I've been trying to take slow release melatonin. So look, but I don't want to become dependent on these things, because at the moment what I was finding, particularly on race weekends, is that I was taking sleeping tablets in order to get through a race weekend. And then I'd get home and it'll go, I'll just take one more tonight. And then you're like, hang on a minute. You do not want to get addicted to that stuff. Yeah,
and I also think when you're traveling in and out of time zones with the frequency that you are, like you can't get a handle on where you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to be feeling in any one situation, because you just got to keep switching in and out of time zones, and your circadian rhythm's just completely all over the place.
Totally. I wonder whether also you shouldn't let that play on your mind as much. Look, no one's going to be taking sleep advice from me, are they? But I do think that you can get really bogged down and stressed out by going in and out of time zones. You almost got to take it in your stride. Like, I'm a big believer in staying as hydrated as possible. Yeah. Sometimes I'm guilty of not doing that. But also, again, if you factor booze in, that negates all that hard work with the hydration. So just don't. So actually, I don't drink on race weekends. I mean, there might be a couple of people on Sky going, what?
Yeah.
Definitely saw you with a Corona at the Mexican Grand Prix.
0.0.
Yeah. But actually, I really don't. I've stripped it right back. And Billy McGinty, my boss, will be thinking, well done, Pinkers.
Yes, good one,
won't
Pinkerton.
Entirely believe me, but no. But seriously, because I think actually you're there to do a job. You've got to get it. Long gone are the days where we just travelled the world and had great fun.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see, you know, because I think this is the thing. You've got consistent performance. I mean, we talked right at the beginning about what you can learn from your world of Formula One, and definitely what I've observed from that world and from Ben's world as well is actually this consistency thing, and it can be really boring. It can be really boring to just do the same thing again and again and again and again. But that repeat pattern of behavior is what makes those pit times come down to 1 point whatever it is, isn't it? And just absolute focus on kind of the routine and making sure that you're doing everything you can.
I think routine's actually really healthy. And I know my kids respond really well to routine, and you need that kind of structure in your life. Yeah. And it's patterns that repeat over the year. Like Wiggy and I will sit down at the beginning of the year and plan the whole year. And actually that brings you a sense of calm.
You know what's
doesn't
coming.
It? Yeah. So if I can do that on a daily basis as well as a weekly, monthly, yearly.
And also like you just don't have to overthink it too much. I think the other thing is definitely when we went away to sort of, you know, concoct these powder formulations, very much in my mind was like, well, if I'm the consumer, this has got to be really simple. I cannot overcomplicate this, because if I overcomplicate it, there's no freaking way I'm going to be doing it. Yeah. I need it to be totally straightforward, and I need to know. I was walking into these supplement stores all down the high street, and I just don't know what the hell I'm looking at.
I know.
Like, I need to know what I'm dealing with here, and I need to know how I can get over the things that I want to get over. And for me, it was my whole IVF recovery story, which was trying to get over years of pummeling yourself with hormones and everything else. How am I going to get on top of that and actually not right the wrong, but just definitely negate some of that stuff that's been going on there, both mentally and physically? How am I going to get myself back up to a place where I feel like I can take on the world again and do what I want to be able to do?
And do you feel like you have?
Yeah, it's been extraordinary, because you go from a place of, and I tell you what's really interesting, and you'll definitely relate to this, is that I went from a place where I felt completely out of control, because everything is sort of, you basically hand yourself over to science, don't you? And say, you figure it out, because I can't. And then you're busy injecting yourself with things left, right and center. Yeah. But all for the greater good. Yeah. But what comes of that in the end is actually this sort of sense of, oh my God, I just don't even know what good looks like anymore. I can't even figure that out for myself, when you've always known what it did previously. And so you have this sort of strange sort of moment where you say, well, how can I kind of get myself back to where I was, having sort of put myself through all of this? And fundamentally, one of the things that really helped me was actually starting the business, because as well as actually what the powders were able to do once we'd formulated them and we knew we had really best in class ingredients and everything else, once we were there, that was easy. But actually the bit beforehand, which was about taking back control in a different way of the outcomes. So, okay, let's get stuck into this as a journalist. Let's do the research. Let's find out what we should be using, why we should be using it, how it's going to help, not just in an individual ingredient sense, but as a compounded formulation. Like, actually, let's really dive into that and work out what it is that's going to set us apart from everybody else. And actually going on that journey was as rewarding as taking what's come out of it.
That's amazing.
Because you actually find that you're then back in control of something that, you know, you had sort of handed over to everybody else to manage.
Yeah.
It's weird, isn't it?
No, it's not weird at all. I think it's you, Georgie. I've always thought that about you. Whenever you've had a problem in life or a challenge.
Of which we've had a few.
Yeah, but you've approached it in a really methodical and practical, and you know, you then get about nothing. I don't think anything has really phased you.
And for me, it's about, you know, having access to these elite sport thinkers who are thinking at this top level about human performance.
Yeah.
And how can we kind of extract that and go, we know all this stuff from this sports team and what they're doing with the athletes. How can we actually make sure that people like you, me, everyone else who's living a kind of demanding lifestyle get something out of it?
And put it to good use. I mean, what are we all here for?
Yeah.
If we aren't, as you say, taking the best, learning from it and doing good with it.
I've got one final question, which is totally nothing to do with recovery, sleep, or any of the above. It's actually selfishly completely to do with Formula One. Okay. Can Lewis win his 8th championship title this campaign, you think?
Yeah, why not?
I'd love that.
I think a lot of people would, wouldn't they? Yeah. I mean, what a story. What a film that would make.
Yeah, I mean,
look, Ferrari, I think, of the performances there, they you know, their season, as did all the other teams, ebbed and flowed through the year. It was difficult to see a trajectory. I mean, obviously McLaren ultimately won the championship and, you know, performing well, but even they had little dips in performance. It was almost a sort of track dependent, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You're thinking, but I can't make sense of why they're strong there and not there. But Ferrari, I felt like you saw real moments of brilliance from Ferrari last year. With obviously Carlos and Charles behind the wheel. But now to put Lewis in there, it's going to be fascinating to see. But look, bring it forward to Lewis signing for them.
Yeah,
that photo of him at Maranello is
iconic.
I mean, it's like a moment in history, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, he smashed that out of the box with that picture.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Charles will be a tough teammate for him as well. And then you've got this huge influx of rookies. The only 2 teams that haven't changed their driver lineup for this year coming, the year we're in, 2025, right now, McLaren and Aston Martin.
Yeah.
So we've got a massive overhaul in different dynamics. I'm fascinated to see how that's going to play out. So it will be interesting to see how he gets on alongside Charles in the Ferrari and who comes out on top of that, because we know Charles is rapid on a single lap. And, you know, actually last year, Lewis struggled in qualifying in relation to his teammate, but then came good with his racecraft. Yeah. So it's going to be amazing to see.
But will Aston Martin stick with their driver lineup for the rest of this year?
I thought you said there was one last question.
Oh, sorry. See, now I got it.
She's excited.
Don't try and dive out of that particular answer.
Well, are you asking if Max will go to Aston Martin?
I'm asking if Max is going to Aston Martin.
I mean, it could happen, couldn't it?
In £1 billion deal.
The thing is that Lawrence Stroll, you know, he always has big ambitions. Yeah. You know, and he will always go for, like, he didn't stop until he got Adrian Newey. Yeah. Like, you know, so for him, but here's the big conundrum.
Who gives?
Is he going to make his own son give way for Max? I think it's possible that that Lance leaves on his own terms, or Fernando leaves because he sees naturally his retirement coming. And so Max races alongside Lance. I mean, I don't want to see Fernando go either.
No,
Fernando's it's the gift that keeps on giving, isn't it?
I know. He's
but wonderful. You see, this is what I've learned about F1. You can't hang on to these romantic notions. Like, you know, obviously I was gutted when Daniel left, but you have to accept that the sport rolls on and it moves forward and it's constantly evolving. And that's what makes it brilliant, is that it never rests on its laurels. It's always pushing boundaries. It's always looking for extra performance in whether it comes in the shape of a drive or a new, invention that will set them apart, exploitation of a loophole, whatever you want to call it. So that's what keeps me on the edge of my seat, and that's what keeps me fascinated and in love with the sport. Before we go, though, I have had a number of requests from people, knowing that I was coming on the podcast to talk to you, about Georgie in small places. And for anyone who doesn't know, this is a game that we started back in 2012. It was based on the fact that when we flew on a long-haul flight, we basically tried to get Georgie into the overhead locker, which I'm sure is not legal.
En route to Melbourne.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not legal. But anyway, we didn't do it. But we managed to squeeze you into one of with the air stewardess's permission and help, to see just how small you are. And
GA on BA.
Oh, hello. Here we go. She's rebranded it.
Yeah, but if I look around the podcast studio, I can't see anywhere that warrants putting me under or in or on the top
There's
of.
There's a recycling bin.
Yeah, we'll find, if we do find something from between now and leaving the building, what I agree to do with you is we will put me in it.
Yes.
And we will post it.
Okay.
But we'll
can you just...
I reserve judgment to say it has to be an agreed situation where I feel... Because I get really claustrophobic. I reckon my claustrophobia began from being shoved in one of those overhead lockers.
Please tell them that this isn't bullying, that you were completely...
complicit.
Yeah, no, you were...
Well, I was to a point.
No, you loved it, okay? It was great fun. And then you kind of got a bit of a cult following. Where are you going to put Georgie now? Like you're our little toy.
All right, okay. From this studio down to reception, if we can find somewhere that warrants it, I'll give you permission to do that.
I reckon your handbag would do. It's bloody massive.
That's where my shoulder injury comes from.
There you go.
There you go. Too big a handbag. Brilliant. Thanks, Pink.
Thanks, George.